Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Madonna Kendona and I'm the Director of Programs at Women First. And today I have the privilege to serve as moderator during this discussion. Before we move to the main event, I'd like to talk a little bit about Women First International Fund. We used to be known as the Virginia Gildersleeve International Fund, and we've existed for over 50 years. In 2019, we made a shift to multi-year flexible funding under the broad umbrella of economic justice. And we fund organizations led by women and trans individuals operating in South Asia and East Africa. Today we have the privilege of having 4 of our fearless leaders of the organizations we support here with us. And it's an opportunity for us to hear from them about what their vision is for their communities and their organizations, as well as what kind of support they need from us to be able to make that vision come true. So I will invite each one of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what a gender-just economy looks like for you. Hamsa, would you like to start?
I was not told I was going first.
Sorry.
That's great. My name is Hamsa Vijayaraghavan. I am the Chief Operating Officer of an organization called Migration and Asylum Project, which is based in New Delhi in India. We've been around since 2013, so just over 11 years now. Our main work is actually providing, we're basically a group of lawyers. So our main work is providing legal representation to asylum seekers and refugees within the sort of UNHCR asylum process, so helping them gain recognition or refugee status. Because we've been doing this for a while, we also do other work with refugees, which includes legal empowerment, providing legal protections, legal assistance, connecting them to lawyers who can help them also access justice. And with Women First, we have a small project that we implement with a partner called Silaivadi. We've left some materials over there in case anyone's interested in learning more about that. But what we do is we work with Afghan refugee women on livelihood options for them in India. So when it comes to a gender-just economy, for me, I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I feel like it's not even a just economy right now when it comes to refugees, because they don't have the right to work at all in India. And when it comes to refugee women, the sort of challenges are many-fold in that sense, because they don't have any legal papers. They have a lot of the refugees that we get in India are actually, a vast majority are women, especially the Afghan women, because it's the easiest country for them to travel to on a flight from Afghanistan, and they get visas relatively easily to get into the country, but they don't have the right to work when they get there. So rehabilitation is So rehabilitation is extremely difficult. Rebuilding their lives is very difficult. So I think for me, just in a nutshell, a gender-just economy would really be an economy where refugee women are allowed to contribute in the ways that they are able and enabled to do that, by giving them the right to work, but also acknowledging that contributing to the economy doesn't mean they generate an income. It's also that they have caregiving, and that caregiving, for example, those duties that they discharge enable somebody else to contribute to the economy. It could be a son, it could be a husband, whatever it takes to rebuild their lives. So yeah. So thank you.
My name is MaryBeth Sanate. I come from Manipur. It's northeast part of India, which is bordering Myanmar. I work with Rural Women Upliftment Society, which is one of the grantee partner of Women First. Our organization works on, as a women organization, our priority is often on issues of women. We work with economic empowerment for India, where we also engage with more than 500 women artisans engaging in traditional weavings, artisans, and bamboo works, and different kind of handmade crafts work. We do also work with women vegetable vendors who sells vegetables in the streets, in the markets. We also give skill building, knowledge building for young girls from marginalized community. We also have this project on women and environment, a women-led environment program for better waste management, clean river campaign, or protection of land and natural resources with women-led collective. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, I just forgot to answer the gender just economy.
I was going to come back to you.
Yeah, sorry. From our local context, if you would ask this, most of the people would say there should be or there cannot be a gender just economy. That's not acceptable because it is not our customary laws and practices. But as for me and the team and the women collective that we work with, gender just economy has a multi-dimensional aspects where we looked into women working in household-based activities, women working in semi-urban sector where they have a long hours of work with minimum pay, or unpaid job in agriculture sector, or women in our place has no the right to property inheritance, have no control over land and resources. So unless we address all these kind of issues, then I think there can be no gender just economy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Mueni. I'm the founder and the team leader at Making a Difference Sisters, abbreviated as M.A.D Sisters, the Crazy Sisters. And yes, we're crazy, and yes, we're mad of the injustices, mad of the inequalities surrounding women and girls in our community. So M.A.D Sisters is a women-led and community-based organization in Kibera, Nairobi, Kenya. Kibera is one of the largest informal settlements in Africa, if not the world. Myself, I'm born and raised, and I still live in the informal settlement of Kibera, and I've witnessed the challenges and the hardship firsthand. Talk of lack of access to education, lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to sanitary products, and also gender-based violence, which is very common and very normalized in my community. And one thing for sure in Kibera, one of the biggest challenges is abject poverty. Women in Kibera don't have access to their own money. And what this means is they don't have the agency, they don't have the autonomy. They can't make the decision of their lives, their family, and even that of their community at large. And for sure, I know, and I've witnessed, and I know for sure that poverty brings a lot of challenges. Even the high rate of teenage pregnancy in Kibera is because of poverty. High rate of early marriage is because of poverty. And at M.A.D Sisters, and personally, I believe economic empowerment is the bedrock to any other form of empowerment. So at M.A.D Sisters, girls and women are our purpose, and we work with them to champion for their safety, their rights, and their well-being. And we do this through advocacy, community-led initiatives, and community engagement. And as an organization, for us, Agenda Just Economy is whereby everyone in the community, including the girls and the women, have access to economic empowerment, have access to education, and they can be able to thrive and live with dignity. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my name is Lydia Moyo. I'm the founder and executive director for her initiative organization that is based in Tanzania. So Her Initiative is a young women-led organization that works to contribute to breaking the cycle of poverty and create financial resilience among girls and young women in Tanzania. And in doing that, we leverage also on technology to achieve the mission. So in everything that we do, we use economic empowerment as our approach. And that is because we see that poverty is the bedrock of so many challenges facing girls and women, including child marriage, teen pregnancies, unemployment, name them all. So what we want to do is to empower women economically in order to influence not just economic outcomes, but also sexual reproductive health and rights outcomes. So the question is, how do we do it? So our economic empowerment approach believes in 4 pillars. The first one is mindset transformation. That is making sure women and girls have access to information, but also building up their agency to know and stand up for their rights and those of others. The second pillar is skills development, ensuring that women have got skills to participate in income-generating activities, and ensuring they're not just participating, but are competent, because most of the time they say women are being favored, and forgetting that women are also competent in the work that we're doing. So we skill young women with soft skills, hard skills, ensuring that they are capable to participate in the economy. But the third pillar is also around linkages to resources. So we believe that this girl is now transformed, she's skilled, now she needs resources, she needs opportunities to actually continue what she's doing. So we work with different partners, that is government and private sector, to actually link young women with these resources. And the last one is enabling environment. I'm sure we're all aware we can do everything, but if we do not have supportive laws, supportive policies, it becomes difficult. So here we work with different stakeholders in the communities to actually make sure we're influencing better policies and better laws that are supporting women and girls. So briefly, that is what we do. In everything that we're doing now, we're embracing technology, because we see now technology is not just the future. So we use artificial intelligence powered SMS, we use website to make sure that we're accommodating young women both in the rural and young women in the urban and unleash their full potential. So a gender-just economy for me first is an economy that is operating from a gender lens. And that means it's broader than just an economy. With a gender lens means it's lightening issues and areas that are facing women and girls in my community. But also a gender lens for me is a gender-just economy for me is also the one that is operating with promotion of access. By access, I mean seeing women and girls have access to resources, women and girls have access to skills, women and girls have access to information. Because most people, or most women and girls, are not able to actually fulfill the dreams that they have for themselves simply because they're not informed. But a gender-just economy is also an economy that is embracing the diversity and heterogeneous of women and girls. Women and girls are so different. So women and girls in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, in Mwanza, in rural and urban, they are all so different. But how does an economy actually embrace that diversity and not use it as a weakness, but utilize it as a strength? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's clear that you know your stuff. It's clear that you live in the communities that you serve. It's clear that you understand what the issues are and what the potential solutions are. You're already implementing them on the ground. Can you tell us what some of the challenges are? Go deeper into the challenges that you mentioned. You talked about policies, you talked about laws, you talked about cultural norms and societal norms that are barriers and challenges to your work. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges to being seen as experts?
Well, now that I have the mic, let's start. Of course, challenges will always be there. And for me, I'll talk of an internal challenge, the external challenges as well. For the internal challenge, the challenge is being seen as a savior. So there's high expectation and high demand placed on you. Everyone in the community, the girls who work with, the women who work with, the community at large, they come running to you thinking that you have the solution to all of their problems. But like back at home, my phone is always ringing. Susan, My child has been sent out of school because of lack of school fees. Susan, there's a girl who has been raped. Susan, we don't have food. And at times the pressure is so high that it takes a toll on even our mental health and our well-being. We suffer anxiety, stress, as we struggle to meet the demands of the people we work with, the people in our community. So that is the internal. And then external, I'll say expertise being linked or associated with formal education. So despite having intensive knowledge about my community, despite my lived experience, I'm still not an expert to many people because I don't have a formal education, I don't have a degree, I don't have a master's, I don't have a PhD. And you see, what this means is at times you're being dismissed and you're not being involved in decision-making spaces. And also what that means is that people, because not everyone is elite, not everyone comes from a rich educational background, but again, because the majority of these people, they're not elite, then how are we going to ensure that the interventions, the policies also are going to address the needs of these people if we don't include them? So to me, I'll say representation, it's also inclusion.
It is, when we speak about refugees, we're always talking in India or in many countries in Africa for that matter about whether we've signed the Refugee Convention and whether we can apply the Refugee Convention and whether the countries are adhering to that, and oh no, they're not. And therefore these are going to be the repercussions, and how can we address that? Whereas, I mean, our countries never were involved in framing the Refugee Convention. So they're not going to sign it. So we kind of need to move beyond this sort of imposed narrative that we have in many ways, that we are also still trying to fit into, although it doesn't fit our situation at all. So that's one part of it. But when it comes to the women and the girls in India, refugee women and girls in India, the fact that we don't have laws for refugees, I mean, we are a very, very, I wouldn't say a law-abiding country at all, we're not, but we have a lot of laws for what it's worth. It could be, again, colonial legacy, whatever, but it so happens that we have lots of laws. But we don't have laws for refugees, which is just strange given the way that our countries were formed in that region. I mean, these are post-colonial countries. We didn't draw our own borders. The people who we now call refugees in India were very much a part of the subcontinent, of the country in many ways. They're just people who moved or were moved 200 years ago, 100 years ago by other countries that are no longer governing us. So we haven't kind of moved beyond that to make our own laws that fit our own situation. And the way that's played out is the kind of securitization narrative that you have here, for example, in the States or in Europe, where you have people moving across borders and then you penalize them because they're illegal immigrants. We've developed that kind of narrative which affects these women and girls because these are women coming from, Tamils from Sri Lanka, for example, went from India at some point. There are so many cultural similarities, there are linguistic similarities. There's no reason why they can't come back and live in India and not be given legal, documentation, for want of a better word, to do that. But we somehow moved past that into this new, regime where we are so homogenous with the global north. Again, I keep coming back to that, but you're way ahead of us in defining borders in some ways. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're trying to catch up to that. It's the same thing across all kinds of things, the same thing with climate justice, for example. You can't have the same framework for climate justice that you have in the global north, in the global south. It doesn't translate. And it's the same thing for migration. But yeah, I think that's it. We just need to think about what suits us. And we, again, as post-colonial countries, as nations that have seen so much strife, so much distress, shared histories, I think we need to accommodate that when it comes to legal policies as well. That needs to be reflected in our legal frameworks, so that they are more humane and humanitarian, and they reflect the history that we've had, where, any of us could have been refugees at this point, and probably will be at some point, the way things are going now. So.
Thank you, Hamsa. I have a follow-up question for you. How do you get to that place involving women leaders and women-led organizations? How do you get them to be part of this discourse?
I mean, involving women leaders as far as I just want to get to this point where we don't keep saying women leaders. I mean, we are half the population in the country, in the region, in the world. There's no reason why we shouldn't be involved, and we are. I think at least, I mean, I'm here, you're here, we're all here right now. We're all leading organizations or working for organizations. All of us have a voice, so someone helped us get here. So clearly there are allies. I mean, we need to find them, maybe they need to be more vocal, that's one part of it. But how we get there is having honest discourse, not trying to subscribe to predefined notions of what is the right kind of policy to have, what is more secure, what is more what subscribes to whatever narratives you've had in the past, many of which are not the right narrative. I mean, there's racism, there's xenophobia, there's all of that. And we need to kind of move beyond that, I think. But when it comes to involving women, I think women are involved always in some way or the other. I think the way we are going, generally, women do have more of a voice, at least in India, they do, definitely. We are getting there. I feel more and more like it's women like me right now, and I mean, I do come from a place of relative privilege. I didn't grow up within the community that I serve at all. I've had a lot of privilege in that sense. I've always had stable education, for example, all the right degrees, all of that. But there are many people like me that can facilitate women who've not had those advantages. And we do that. I think we are trying that. I think forums like this give us the opportunity to do that as well. But yeah, I don't think it's that hard. I think it's just common sense. Like Lydia said as well, the people that we work with are the experts. It makes sense to bring them in on those consultations because you are losing that information if you don't. And you don't have access to that knowledge otherwise. So I actually think it's just common sense and logic and being open to discourse largely and not being afraid of an alternative narrative in that sense as well.
Thank you, Hamsa. So you've talked. The next question is for Susan. So Hamsa, you talked about being able to bring along people who don't necessarily have the kind of privileges that we might have sitting in this room, and really just stepping up. I think, Susan, you are one of the people in your community who stepped up, and you have really shared your story. Can you tell us how you pass the mic to members of your community who otherwise might not be heard? I don't believe in saying giving a voice to the voiceless. I think we all have voices. But how do you amplify their needs, their stories, what they want to share with the world?
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say I'm grateful to Women First for passing the mic to me as a young person. And it's an honor and a privilege. And I'm committed to also pass the mic to other people back in my community. Because I believe the voice of the young people is not only a tool for communication, but also a voice and a force for change and empowerment. I personally believe it's important to include and hear the voice of the young people. And by inclusion, I mean not just an exercise of ticking the boxes that you're working with young people or included young people, but meaningfully engaging the young people right from the inception of the project when it comes to designing, implementation, monitoring and evaluation. And at M.A.D Sisters, we have a program called Marisha Dada. It's a Swahili word which means enlighten a sister. And it's a girl-led and it's a girl-centered program. The girls who are the front line to champion for and advocate and address their needs. They also use the space to share stories, to share their stories, to amplify their voices. And in Kibra, we know the power of young people with social media or digital tools. In Kibra, we have a Facebook page. It's called Kibira Nikwetu. And we also have a local radio station called Pamoja FM. And we leverage on these platforms to make sure we change the narratives and advocate for change that we want to see. I believe that young people, we have a voice, and this voice needs to be heard. And it's only through our voices that we will be able to break some of the challenges that as young people we're facing, because as young people, we understand our local needs. We know the challenges that we face and the dynamics. So it's important to just have platforms that are fully youth-led, because I believe given the opportunity, the young people we have the power and we have the capacity and the capability to transform our lives. So I agree with Madonna. We don't have a. It's not like we don't have a voice. We have a voice, and at times it's only because we're being silenced or our voice is overlooked and marginalized. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. You actually answered my follow-up question about how to shift the narrative. So really just giving young people a platform and listening to them because they know what they need. My next question is for you, Lydia. So as the executive director of her initiative, I know you wear many hats. And one of it, which is advocating for more flexible funding to women-led and young women-led, specifically, organizations. So can you tell us what a healthy partner dynamic looks like between a funder and a grantee partner? And also, how can we be part of making sure that your expertise is centered, or your knowledge is centered, since expertise is,
Thank you so much for the question. I like that you say I wear many hats. I would like you to address me as Executive Director for her initiative and a future funder.
Wow.
Yeah, can we do that? Yes, so working on her initiative, being a young woman leader, I think there's so much that I've experienced climbing up the ladder, and that has got me to a desire of wanting to be a funder myself in the future. Because, like, well, who are these people that are funders? So they say they're rich people, either come from rich family. I'm none of those, but I believe I will be a funder one day. And for me, a healthy relationship between a funder and a grantee is more like women first, I would say. If there was that answer where you just write, I would just write women first, but then I would try to explain what does that look like for me. I think first is trust, fully trusting the founders, the leaders, that they have got the passion, capacity, and expertise to actually create meaningful change. It is easy to trust a person with money, I understand, but maybe we need to move that to start trusting people with the expertise to actually do things in the communities. Because if not, then it becomes very difficult because you only trust people with money. And as a leader, if you're getting funding from a person that does not trust you, it becomes really, really hard. They ask you many questions, they have so much requirements, and it's not very healthy in terms of partnership, because we are partnering together to create change in the communities. But second thing I think is more around bottom up and not top down. Because I think bottom-up relationship reflects the needs of the communities that we serve. But top-down relationship between a funder and a grantee actually focuses more on the priorities of the funder. There is nothing wrong with funders having priorities. But I think priorities make sense if they actually reflect the needs of the community that we serve. So for example, let's say your priority is climate justice, or your priority is mental health. Well and good, there is nothing wrong with that. But I will only work on climate justice and mental health if the girls and young women I work with in Tanzania tell me that this is actually an issue for them. If they say this is an issue that needs urgent action. But for them, if they say an issue is GBV, I don't think I really need to move from working on GBV and do climate justice, because this is what the funder says it's an issue for now. So bottom up is actually what's good for both of us, even for the funder who's investing money, to actually invest in something that will really bring results. But also having a partnership that is actually inclusive and a partnership that listens to each other, rather than a grantee just listening what a funder wants. But a third thing for me is around partnership that provides long-term and unrestricted grants. I mean, Susan and the rest of the leaders here could agree with me. We waste a lot of time chasing for money. If the funders could just save us from that trauma of chasing money by giving us long-term funding so that we can actually focus on what really matters, rather than all the time writing proposals and chasing where funders are. So long-term is really important because it gives us a room to actually focus on what's really important. And unrestricted, I don't know how it looks on the outside, but unrestricted funding actually prepares us to actually have sustainable organizations. So if you give me funding that is restricted, meaning you just want to put everything in programming, but remember I have people working for that programs. If they're not compensated, it means it's still exploitative. I know we talk about slave trade, but this is a different kind of slave trade because people are working but are not compensated. But if you give me also restricted funding that is not covering the office, where do you expect me to work? Under the tree? No. I need to be able to have an office. I need to be able to compensate people. I need to be able to strategize. And maybe that's also when we were having a conversation the other day that we're all chasing funding for programs. But as leaders, we need to have a strategic direction. I would prefer if we have many funders who are funding strategies, because you're funding a direction that has got a longer impact, rather than funders are just saying, I want you to work with 100 goals. I can do that, but how sustainable is that? But the last thing that I think this is more healthier for funders and grantee is around inclusive, evolving funding models. So let's say Women First is working with young women leaders like myself and Susan. Like the word is saying young, meaning we're still learning and evolving. So if a funder comes and says, I want you to have 3 years auditor reports. I don't have. First, I don't even have the money to do the auditing, but I'm actually doing something in my community. The funders comes and say, I want you to have 5 staff in your office. I want this and that. There is nothing wrong with all these things, but if we are really desiring or we are really intentional with working with young people, we need to meet them where they are. So how about you pick Susan and work with her, help her, train her, help her put up systems, financial systems, M.A.D systems, because all these things are not rocket science, are things that young people can learn. And with all the global ambition targets we have, Agenda 2030, we have nothing for us without us. We acknowledge that these are young people, they are energetic, but we don't acknowledge that we need to meet them where they are. We need to uplift them where they are, because otherwise we will have to wait for young people to be older, to have 5 years auditor reports. We'll have to wait for them to have a 5-year strategic plan. We'll have to wait for them to have like 5 full-time paid staff. It's not possible, but it is possible if you trust young people with unrestricted state grants to put up all these systems. Just like you can see Susan, I think she was picked when she was at that level, but look what she's doing, myself and many others. So evolving these funding models, and they're like these robots who've been there for years. This is how we do it. This is how it's supposed to be. Okay, that's fine. But how do we meet young people, young women and girls where they are? And I think that becomes more healthier, because if I now think about where Women First took me 4 years ago, when nobody could trust me with any fund, and now when everybody else is trusting me with their money. So I will actually vouch for the person who gave me maybe 10,000 4 years ago than the one who's giving me 100,000 now. So maybe just to put it into perspective, I think that is what I think is a healthy relationship between a funder and a grantee. Thank you.
Just because we've been having these conversations, and I was just listening to Lydia, and I second every single thing she said, and then again. But just to add, I mean the government, the dynamic that all of us have with our government. I mean, we are support before we became the development sector, which just sounds so much fancier. We were the non-government sector. We were supposed to do things that the government was not doing, and maybe was not prioritizing, and sometimes was not okay with. So when a funder comes in, I mean, I've just come off the back this morning of a funder who wanted to have a 3 a.m. call because they wanted documents that we can't possibly have because they are a really large organization and we're not. And I've already spent 5 months making documents. It sounds ridiculous, but that's just how it is. And I mean, just don't be the government. Funders should not be the government because you spend so much time battling things that the funders asking of you, leaving a paper trail sometimes, which is actually counterproductive to your existence. I mean, you're putting yourself in danger just by leaving that paper trail for a funder. I mean, for the funder to then come and tell you, this is not my priority. I mean, I've been in a place where we've designed programs to fit the funder's agenda, which is not necessarily what we want to do. I mean, give us money for what we know and what we would like to do, because that is important too. It may not be the most important thing for you. But don't come to a point of doing good, which is what funders come with, and then tell me that you're only going to do good in this particular way, and that what I'm doing is not, doesn't conform to your idea of it, and then also that I have to give you 562 documents to be able to do that. So I think just don't be the government. I think that's really important, and just be mindful of the pressure that organizations like ours inevitably face from the government to expose us. I think that's important for us.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Hamsa. Food for thought for us. I want to quickly move to MaryBeth. You have experience with lots of different types of partnerships, MaryBeth. I know this. So now, can you tell us how partnerships can make or break one's work? Particularly, can you tell us more about challenges of building organizational resilience as a result of partnerships?
A buffer zone that divides community, a buffer zone that divides the hills and the valleys there in Manipur. So, firing, bumping, killing are a regular routine there back home. So like my husband, who's a little senior to me, he every day pack some of our important documents because we don't know when we will leave our home. So those are the situations we walk in with. 50,000 displaced people, 200 villages burned, and 300 churches burned. Within a span of 2 months, 36 tribal women has encountered violence against women, including rape that is used as a weapon of war. So in that kind of context, as a women, we move out of our home and trying to provide services to the Arzen call. The Arzen call for humanitarian support, the Arzen call to address gender-based violence in the camps, in the court, in the community. So then, however it may be, although we have been engaging in humanitarian crises, helping people in more than 200 relief camps across the state, our priority of gender justice remains with us. We have been carrying that in our shoulder, in our head, in our mind. So in such kind of situation, we redesign our programming. And now from 3rd May, we have had a lot of conflict hardships. I've been working in conflict situations for the past more than 15 years. I have experienced armed violence, ethnic conflict, militarizations, operations, and all sorts of that. But we have redesigned our program, and recently we have helped 1,000 women, internally displaced women, rebuild their livelihood by setting up internally displaced women's market, where they sell vegetables, where they sell their handicrafts work, where they sell bamboo clothes, but it's very difficult to set up the market, although you have the space because they need money. For example, a woman needs to buy 3 or 4 sticks of bamboos that would cost her about $3, not much. With that, you can have them stand up and rebuilding their life and moved on. So that's how we cope with crisis, redesigning program, helping people addressing the urgent goal, but also redesigning the program so that we remains in our priority focus. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question, MaryBeth. Thank you for sharing. What kind of partnerships would you need to help you within this crisis context? You were talking about shifting priorities, you were talking about redesigning your program. What kind of partnerships would help you achieve that?
Let me share just one example. We have skill building program with the support of Women First, where we have like 5 seats for a girl, willing to, especially school dropout girls. But then, as the crisis continue and conflict started, this year we have more than 100 applicants, which we don't know what to do. We have been struggling and hunting people around, asking people, even individuals or some funders to donate. As of now, we have got some assurance, but we still have not got anything. But I feel sad for those girls who are waiting, who are in the waiting list. I mean, you know, there are, in conflict situations, the needs of women, multiple. It's not like, recently, yesterday, I had attended India report on violence against women and other gender justice issue. They have been talking about things that are in normal situations. What can we do for women, like the one-stop center, the Women Commission and all of that. But as for us, women living in conflict situation, we have an additional need where it is not needed in ordinary place, in normal times. So I think those are the kind of things that we do. For example, there are many sexual violence assault women. They lack legal knowledge. They have no financial support for legal to get legal aid. And so in those kind of situations, it is very difficult to also be a women organization. When you see your own, the women that you work with helpless, and you are also helpless, that's really brings us sleepless nights, trauma, stress. So that's what I would like to say, that I would like to look into people who is willing to invest in conflict situation, because if you looked at in India, many Indian corporates, they say, this is a conflict zone, we cannot go there, we will pull out our resources. We have moved our staff from Manipur to Mumbai. So those are kind of answers that I have seen while struggling to find supports for those women in need of help. So I really urge partnership, organizations that are willing to invest in conflict situations like Manipur.
Thank you. I think this is the right time to move to your call to action. We have civil society, potential peer organizations, other funders, and maybe some governments represented in the room. What is your call to action to them? What kind of support, what kind of resources do you need to be able to do your work and have the impact that you would like to see? Start with you.
Okay, I can start. So I have like 3 call to actions to funders. I believe there are funders in the room. And there's something like this. If you get it, if you find it, just grab it. This is a letter I wrote it to funders, and it was saying, open letter to development partners, put your money where your words are. So my first message is gonna be to really put your money where your words are. And by that I mean, let's move away from ambitious targets, global campaigns, unfulfilled commitments, to deliberate action of really funding youth and women and girls. Let's be more into action rather than words. And there's this say that says, where your money is where your heart is. So if you put your money where your words are, meaning you're pouring your money where actually your heart is. And the second thing is actually, let's think about transparency and accountability when it comes to funding. Who holds funders accountable? That's a question to ask ourselves. Because we hold grassroots organizations accountable, but who holds funders accountable? So if you're a funder working with women and girls or youth, just ask yourself, in a rank of 1 to 10, how much of your money is actually trickling down to the women and girls in the communities? You don't have to answer me that now, but ask yourself, and then you will find out where your money is just lost in the middle somewhere there and not really reaching out to women and girls. And if we really find a way to hold funders accountable, maybe we'll move, we will see progress. And the third thing that I want to say is actually a question to funders and development partners. There are so many discussions and so much conversation around evolving funding models, but very little change is done. So my question is, where are we stuck? Why are we not moving? Why we come to CSW 5 years, 6 years, and we're talking about the same thing? Maybe there are challenges that you know, or maybe you don't know, but I'd really like to know, why are we stuck? Why are we not moving? Why are we continuing having this conversation that could probably be addressed? The last thing I want to say is to my peer, young people, is to say, you are experts, keep doing what you're doing. I see Jenny, I see Sia, and many other young people who are here. Keep doing what you're doing and speak your truth. Do not allow yourself to be exploited. You are good enough to actually create change. And the more you do not endure exploitation and speak up, you create a better world, not just for yourself, but for the people around you and the future that we need for the women and girls in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. And if anybody wants to answer that question, you're free to do so in the next session. Go ahead, Susan.
Yes, I believe we are all key stakeholders in these issues, and we all have a part to play. We have different capacities, and for me, it's just to urge everyone, let's build synergy. To funders, just listen to what Lydia said and take action. I think she's put it clearly, very well. To the policymakers, I'll say, let's include the voices of the grassroots women and girls for a responsive and an inclusive solution. To my peers, I'll say, let's build solidarity for collective advocacy, because I believe there's power in numbers. Lastly, I have to affirm this. Please, funders, back to you again. Trust and fund young people and fund grassroots women. Thank you.
Thank you, MaryBeth. You spoke very well about the context. What is your call?
For my experience, after working more than many years, a decade with women organizations, I saw that many women and their organizations at the grassroots level, especially the community-based women organization, have been doing a very incredible work, helping communities, building communities, helping women to women work. But they do not know how to write proposal and develop a budget. They fund themselves. When they come together, they bring small monies with them and they continue doing work. So I really used to think that it would be very beneficial if they also get some sort of funding so that their works, their voice can be amplified.
Thank you, MaryBeth. I feel like everyone else has already said. I think it's simple. I mean, just show up, be allies, don't be supervisors. We don't need supervisors. We know what we're doing largely. I think it makes more sense for funders to invest their time and their money in finding the right organizations, finding genuine organizations, because I know that is a concern. Finding organizations that have their ear to the ground, that know what the community needs, or at least are willing to find out what they need. And then not so much time and money on monitoring and evaluation. I mean, I have no objection to monitoring and evaluation. I think we've taken it that it's beyond, redemption at this point. I feel like we invest more on, making targets and then saying, oh my God, you said 200 and you only reached 198, than in figuring out how to reach the next 200. I think just cut down on the bureaucracy of it, because like I said, funders are not the government. The objective here is common, and the objective of non-governmental organizations and the government, possibly, I guess, is not the same. But that's not a problem that funders and NGOs or any of us have, really. So I think keep your eye on the target, but don't get to it with all the M&E that you think you need. I think we're all capable of doing what needs to be done without making it hard for everyone, frankly. So yeah, I think it's not very simple. Not very hard to show up.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to open up our discussion. If you have any reflections about what was shared here, please, if there's anything that is relevant to your context, if you have specific questions for our panelists, this is the time.
So I just want to talk about something that has been mentioned, but just to really sink into what it is when we say that women are different and young people are also different. The context is very different. I keep giving this example of some of the women that I work with in Kajiado, and if anyone knows who, and the Maasai community, they are highly patriarchal and highly misogynists, and they truly, me being here is a testament of what education can do, but at the same time I work with the youth and the young women, and we have young women in one of our cohorts that we do a program called Bid for Her, where the women are bidding for her, both her and both the daughters. And we say we're working with the young people, yet one of our women is 30 years old, who's a youth according to the Kenyan Constitution, and she is a grandmother. She's a grandmother, and her first daughter is 17 years old. She has 5 other children. So this is a youth. So while we're talking about context, then it is very different. She was married at 13. Then she just became a woman. But every time I tell people I'm working with the youth, they're looking at the youth and, no, she's not a youth. But those are the young women that we work with. Those are the different, that is the context that we work with. So for the funders in the room, when we say we're working with young women, don't expect everyone, and I'm sorry, Moyo, to just give an example, you don't expect everyone to come looking like her, because we have women who are living a different life from what we know and what we see every day. So when we say we are funding young women, can we fund them in all their diversities? If we're talking about women, the women in my community cannot stand in front, like I am doing today, of people and speak. How are we going to empower them to ensure that, because not everyone can come to the front and speak, how can we reach them in their very lives, So I think I just wanted to talk about context because it is different and it's different. The women in Kibera and the women in Kajiado, we can't box them together, The women in Tanzania and the women in the U.S., we can't box them together. So even when we are thinking about funding and designing, especially designing programs for Africa, we are sorry, Africa is not one central place, It's very diverse. And it's even diverse within the country in itself. So it's something that we just need to think about every time we're designing. And as Lydia was saying, it helps if the grassroots leaders can be able to design their program and then you now just feed it. And I think Lydia has said it, and I will just say it as a last thing. We love feedback. We love the education and the training and the mentorship because we cannot grow without you. We can't grow without the donors and the funders and the partners that we're getting. But at the same time, you also need to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the panelists all for their great presentations today. My question to you is that programs like these, which are so important, have to have the support of families and communities and even men and boys. So how do you engage all of those elements in your work to make it as successful as it is?
So the first thing is when you're doing a needs assessment with the community, you also identify gaps that will actually risk you achieving the outcomes that you want. So for instance, if you're working with adults and girls and young women, there is nothing you can do without their parents, because otherwise they won't even come to your program. So before you even start the program, maybe you need to have a meeting with the parents and guardians, telling them what you're doing and how they can support the girls throughout the process. But also there's nothing you can do without the LGAs, because you might start doing a program and they might put barriers for it to become successful. So maybe LGAs are local government authorities, so the lowest level in that street, in that community. So you need to have a meeting with them, training them about whatever you want to train the girls so that they understand and put up measures to support them. But also you cannot work, especially in a very patriarchal communities, without male influencers, like religious leaders, traditional leaders, fathers, brothers. Because at the end of the day, they might put barriers and fight the feminist movement, which will make it more difficult. But having them involved, actually educating them, putting them in a position where they know how they can support the women and girls helps. So I think that's really important when you're doing programming. I think they would agree with me. Otherwise, your project will fail and they will resist it and they will fight it. So working together in partnership with families, partners, parents, local government authorities will actually help the project be more successful.
I mean, yeah, what Lydia said, but also men are allies. They always are. I mean, you need allies of all kinds, and men are very much part of that. When you're talking about working, we work a lot on sexual and gender-based violence. So in a way, men could be, the sort of adversary in that equation, for want of a better word. But you need men who are also allies. So we often have women brought to our legal clinics by their sons, or their brothers, or their dads. I mean, we do have to work on it. So it's the same thing. I mean, you have to build trust with the community as well. The community has to know. And by the community, I mean the men as well. It's not just the women that you're working with. You are working with the men. I mean, I hate this term capacity building. We use it so much. It's a borderline offensive term in some ways. We're not building capacities. They have capacity. We're just resourcing it in some ways because we happen to have the resources at this point, and they don't. And the work that we do with any community, we start with the men in that sense. Because the community leaders inevitably turn out to be men, especially in the space communities. They are even more conservative than Indian communities, the ones that we have back home in India. We always start by working with the men. They are the ones that turn up to the first meetings that we call, the first sort of focus group discussions that we have. So they know what we are on about. And we need at least a few of them to be on board for the women even to really find the courage in that situation to come on board as well. I mean, that's just what it takes. These are women who've been, in our case, these are women who've been in conflict situations. They are often women who are not used to working outside the house at all or going outside the house. They've been indoors for ages often. And we need the men to bring them out. So we always start with that. It makes it a little bit simpler. It cuts out opposition at a later point because that has happened as well. But yeah, I think it's just easier to work with men than to discount them in that process.
We only have a few minutes.
Yes, I will be very quick. We work in a very complex society where there are multi-ethnic communities with many dividing lines. So we have this tool of walking beyond your faith, walking beyond your community, walking beyond the language that you have. So we have also a tool that working not only with like-minded but also with non-like-minded communities, trying to reduce the dividing lines but also increasing the connectors.
Thank you all, and thank you for your questions and your reflections. I'd like to invite Women First's UN representative, Anita Thomas, to give our closing remarks and to say thank you.
We need to listen to such powerful voices from the ground. It speaks to much of what we talk about at the UN. When you talk about global policies, how they must translate effectively to the ground to make impact, you talked about that even coming from a funder's perspective, that funding must translate to make meaningful impact at the ground. And so in this current scenario, where there are so many global challenges that we are confronting with geopolitical tensions, food crisis, energy crisis, but in this whole realm, the role of women as equal partners, as men and boys as equal partners to make meaningful impact is very important. We must put that right on the focus. And how is it that we make sure those voices are heard at the UN? And I chair the NGO committee on FFD, which is a consortium of NGOs working to advance financing for development at the UN. And in these discussions, and any discussion that happens at the UN, voices of women must be present, especially voices of women who are making impact on the ground. And I really appreciate and congratulate Women First for the effort that it makes to make sure these voices are heard, right? If your voices are not at the table, like you talked about, being inclusive, being at the table, but if there is an opportunity here and your voice is not heard, your community is not being represented. Right? And so let's figure out how we as a coalition of NGOs working together, coming here every year, how can we move the needle and what is it that we can do to make that impact? So there's so much that I wrote, but I'm not going to say any of that because I feel what you said really speaks to passing the mic to women in the grassroots communities to really make bolder and impactful change in the communities that you represent. So thank you all and for coming with us and for sharing your insights. And so we will take this forward into all the forums that we focus on at the UN. So thank you.